Take a second. Sorry, guys. Right. Evening, everyone. The the faces on camera. I've had such an awful day. I spent 2 hours at the doctor. It was just an awful day. I'm actually quite pale, but I can understand why, because also marked till 2:30 this morning. Anyway, whatever is happening. Oh, thanks, Sinead. That's 25% extra, my baby. I'm 63 years old. There's no chance that I'm looking good anymore, guys. Right. Let's do this, guys. Thank you so much for attending, and we'll do our normal thing where we interact and we'll have a bit of fun, hopefully. I'm going to kill my face so that we can focus on what is important. Right. So just in terms of the objectives there, yeah, we're going to spend a bit of time looking at globalization, but also we're going to look at anti-globalization, which I think the textbook might have missed out on. And then also the idea of foreign markets. What do you do when you have a saturated market and you want to still sell more products and get economies of scale? And how do you enter new markets? And then we'll talk about the idea of globalization. I think the reality is that one of the consequences of globalization is that we see the free movement of products, services, skills, and finances across traditional boundaries. Now, the biggest driver of technology, the biggest driver of globalization has always been technology. Technology, in particular, transport technologies, and then obviously computer technologies, information technologies. So we've seen how AI, in particular, will continue with this advance in terms of globalization. Having said that, we have seen significant evidence of anti-globalization movements. Can you think of any of those anti-globalization movements? Anti-globalization movements. I think the first big one, guys, was Brexit. I think we realized that the rules of the game had changed when England left the European Union. And it was this first signs of globalization fracturing. Trump and the Make America Great Again is another example. China has very clearly indicated that they want to be fully self-sufficient in their technological industries, the computer science and the motor industry in future, so that they have all their supply chains internal to the country and that they don't have to rely on outsiders for that kind of technological industries that they have, and they are moving towards that. So as much as globalization is a reality, I think Mark Carney from Canada said it best, that there is a rupture in the world. And the rupture is caused by Trump, who attacks allies, who is horrific about allies, who gets into wars. And for me, I believe Trump is the single most dangerous person in the world. And the tariffs is definitely one. But what has also happened is that the tariffs have been declared illegal by courts, and he has to refund those tariffs now. So this is a strange human being. It's a strange human being. That oak running past the security on Saturday. I mean, now seen as an assassination attempt on Trump. Absolute rubbish. An assassination attempt is when I take a pot shot at you and I miss. So I find all the Trump nonsense, and I despise the individual. That it's just got to me now. I mean, our petrol prices, I see the oil prices over $110 a barrel today and heading north. And now I see Iran has suggested that they want to end the war, and Trump won't talk to them. It is just one individual holding the world ransom. And let's be honest, since the supposed assassination attempt, no one has spoken about Iran. I think it's a distraction. I think it's a load of nonsense. Sorry, I'm having my moment early tonight. So, in terms of globalization, I think there are a couple of things that we see happen. And the first one, yeah, thanks for that, Adrian. The first one is that we see this homogenous culture being developed globally. I mean, and the scary thing is how much social media is driving it. I mean, we see aspects of the manosphere, and I might have told you guys last week to please on Netflix watch the Louis Theroux documentary on the manosphere and this new macho nonsense that we see with men who are allowed to do whatever they want. They can have multiple sex partners. But when they meet their wives or their girlfriends, they better be virgins. And the wives are expected to be faithful where the men can do whatever the heck they want. Please do yourself a favor and watch that. And it's that kind of new cultural, almost domination where men are in charge and women are subservient. I mean, what a load of horse manure. I don't know if anyone has watched anything on the manosphere. Please find Louis Theroux on the manosphere. The kind of nonsense and this machismo. And, for me, I was part of a study on masculinity at University of KwaZulu-Natal. And for a lot of time, guys, I work from home and I'm a bit of the house husband because I do all the cooking. I mean, I do a lot at home. And when I work from home, I'll do the washing, etc., etc. And it was a strange study to be part of. I was an outlier because it's insane how sexist I really am. I'm quite happy to do all of that as long as I earn more than my wife. So I messed up really badly their results. The Afrikaner in my gaan nie toelaat that my wife earns more than me. So um yeah, I don't know about that, boy. Good at irritating my wife as well. So, guys, in terms of technology, I think we've seen how global connects have happened and how quickly information spreads. And for me, I always just look at the 24-hour newsreels and the power of those newsreels and how quickly information spreads. I mean, when I saw there was an attempt on Trump, I hoped it had succeeded, but unfortunately, yeah, it didn't. And then, guys, yeah, politically, this interdependence between nations. But again, the textbook is dated, and this textbook is bloody new because, again, Mark Carney, if you ever get a chance, watch Mark Carney's speech to the UN, and he talks about a rupture in the world. It is scary, Sinead. I mean, I have to be the breadwinner. And I know several women who are the breadwinners and their husbands are comfortable with it. But my brain cannot process that. It's pathetic. But again, can I just say, I'm 63 years old. I belong to a generation where, the men brought the bacon home and the women cooked it. Unfortunately, I bring the bacon home and I cook it. I'm complaining. This is all being recorded, by the way, guys. It's all being recorded. So, in terms of the benefits associated with globalization, the first one is new markets. And what new markets gives us will always be a bigger audience to sell our stuff to. And more importantly, it is economies of scale. So we're able to reduce the per unit prices of items. And then just it also allows us to get resources from where it actually matters, where we get the resources cheaper. And it allows us to even become more efficient and get better quality resources because you can source from anywhere in the world. And again, because transport technologies have advanced so significantly, you can literally source and get deliveries overnight. So I think the other benefits, it allows us to diversify. I think the one thing that organizations who are one trick ponies have as a headache is that if a particular industry slows down, it is very difficult during those tough times to survive. But if you are in multiple industries, because generally industries of, are affected differently by economic downturns, etc., and if you're across a range of industries, it gives you that buffer. And then just also, guys, it is about strategic alliances. I mean, and I've said this a multiple times, my master's and PhD are in the auto industry. It's a place where I'm comfortable. It's an industry that I still track and unfortunately talk about too much. But the one thing we see in the auto industry are those strategic alliances, those strategic partnerships. And they in every single one of the brands will use a competitor's technology. Guys, and then also it is about learning. I think the key thing is that global learning gives us access to some of the best practices around. And I mean the best of the best practices. So the reality is that innovations that happen elsewhere can become beneficial to us. So, in terms of internationalization, and this is the stuff that I'm a little bit hesitant about in terms of the textbook, is that they use different designations and similar designations um, on different occasions, and you'll see in a second what I mean by that. So, the general rule is that you would start in your domestic market. You will go with your domestic market, and it normally starts local and then goes regional and then goes national. I saw that, Boyo. I absolutely saw that. I saw that. I mean, my son is a director in a global AI firm. He's 29 and he's a hell of an impressive young man. But he is working. I'm not going to give more details than in a country, not South Africa, working with the biggest provider of a specific service in that country. And they are looking at cutting their staff by 90% because of the AIs that my son's firm writes. 90%. The biggest challenge is, where do these people go? Where do these people go? These people are specialized, skilled in a certain thing. But when you've got an AI that can compare billions and billions of data points and take corrective action around those data points if there are mistakes, you cannot have humans. I am worried about AI. I'm excited as hell about AI, but those kinds of things are deeply concerning. And I think I did tell you guys the impact of AI on entry level positions. The scary part of it is they consider, or low skilled positions, my apologies, they put management lecturer as a low skilled position. I thought, oh, jeez, I want a PhD, man. Wat genigtig is aan die gang hierso? So, my low skilled, it messed with me. Guys, and then from there, international, you start exporting, generally either direct exporting or you have an export partner. And then we become a multinational. And this is where you have a footprint in a number of countries. 30% of your total sales are then overseas. You go global and then transnational, the kind of Googles and Apples and those kinds of companies, and Amazon, obviously, as well. So, in terms of the modes of international expansion, I think there are sheltered industries that won't be affected by globalization. Hairdressers is the example that I've given there. I might even stolen hairdresser from the textbook. And then also when we are trading interest industries where we export, and then global industries essentially have significant levels of export, significant levels of investment, sometimes starting to look at manufacturing in other countries. So when we look at expanding international, so please remember, guys, these fine things. So that first one was internationalization. Here it is the modes of international expansion, but it really is the modes towards internationalization. So the first one, exporting, and then yeah, exporting under license, franchising, and you can see a whole bunch of those. So for exporting, I think indirect exporting, where you have an export agent and then obviously very little control with what that agent does with your product. Direct exporting, where you directly export into shops, etc. And then really it is you tend to control more things. What do we export from South Africa? What are the kinds of things we export from South Africa? Oh, wine is a wonderful example, Adrian. Wonderful, wonderful. Um, yeah, fresh fruit, veg, and flowers. We export significant amounts of that. What else do we export? Please don't say rugby players, although that is 100% true. Included manganese, we export here, absolutely. Coal, we export. Um, we export raw leather. So there are lots of those kinds of things that we export. Yeah, I think the advantages would be the economies of scale. It creates business at home and employment opportunities at home. Disadvantage, transport costs are high, and you will run into Trump and his tariffs. Licensing is where you actually provide the licensee an opportunity to use your products and services. The licensee will pay royalties, and they will then bear the cost of setting up the process of linking it to customers. So no capital investment. And you can see there the licensor tries to maintain control over the license. Very difficult to get economies of scale, and you could lose technological know-how. I mean, we see how quickly people copy things nowadays. Anyone come across the term a turnkey project? I have a friend that in the auto industry that does a vast amount of these across Africa. They manufacture car components. So turnkey is, as the name suggests, you would turn the key and the manufacturing process would start. So what happens is the company that is wanting to expand their footprint will set up a factory, they'll set up the machinery, they'll do the training of the workers, and all the new owners would need to do is turn the key and everything would work automatically. It is a wonderful way of increasing your footprint. I think the problem is that sometimes these projects don't last. But the simple truth is, it gives knowledge into new areas where they can maintain the standards that you have in whatever they manufacture. Strategic alliances, yeah. Remember the difference between a joint venture and a strategic alliance. A strategic alliance means we don't create a new business. We often share technologies, manufacturing facilities, etc. Whereas a joint venture is we set up a different business. Lots of disadvantages, guys. And then franchising. Yeah, give me examples of famous franchises that have left South African shores. Famous franchises that have left our shores. Spar, 100%, Boya. The most famous for me is Nando's. If you see what Nando's has in the UK, for example. I mean, a significant footprint. Um, the other ones that, yeah, the other ones that stand out, yeah, KFC came into South Africa, nice one. We don't franchise. We are a franchisee from overseas. Yeah, one of the person who owns the game farm next to where we live, he is the overall franchise owner of KFC. That's guys, and then wholly owned subsidiaries. So here you have the organization build a factory, set up the production lines, buy an existing factory sometimes, make sure that they own 51% of the shares, and they start. And we see wholly owned subsidiaries in car manufacturing in South Africa. We manufacture multiple cars in South Africa as a consequence of these subsidiaries. So the thing when we move international and we expand, there are two things to always consider. How much do we focus? Oh, you silly Billy dad. How much do you focus on local responsiveness? So, how much do we customize the items to local conditions? So, if you sell t shirts, there's no need for local responsiveness. Okay. But if you sell cars and you sell cars to a left hand drive country, you would have to then fix that. And then the pressure to reduce costs. And again, when you sell T-shirts, you will find that it's low in terms of local responsiveness and then significant pressure to reduce costs. Getting that balance right is very important because the need to personalize versus the cost of personalizing is what often will drive a decision to move into a specific area or not. So, when we look at going international, I think first of all, the decision on where to go is often a difficult one. So what Porter gave us is the diamond. And I don't know if anyone's ever seen or used Porter's diamond. I've used Porter's diamond in when I did strategic plans for municipalities. And we did it in reverse. So we would say, if we look at Porter's diamond and the different elements of the diamond, what can we put in place to tick the boxes so that if an overseas company wants to invest with us, they can see that we've addressed the Porter diamond issues. So in terms of Porter's diamond, I don't know why this is jumping. Um, and then obviously you'll also look at whether a company can constantly renew itself. The Porter's diamond is actually a very, very powerful model, and it's for me one of Porter's lesser known models, although it's been around for a long time. Who has seen Porter's diamond? Who has seen Porter's diamond previously? Okay. So Porter's diamond talks about these interrelated elements: firm structure, home demand, related and supporting industries, and then factor conditions. Yeah, I used this a lot when I used to facilitate strategic plans, actually. So, in terms of those four attributes, this is what they mean. So, the first one is factor conditions. Now, factor conditions get divided into two: basic and advanced. The first lot of endowments that we talk about often is natural resources, how wonderful the climate is, and then very, very entry level workforce skills. I mean, the first time I saw Porter's Diamond in action was with Pinetown. Now, Pinetown is between Pietermaritzburg and Durban. And you'll see whenever you come on holiday in KwaZulu-Natal, when you get to the last toll gate before Durban, driving towards Durban, on the left-hand side, you have Marion Hill. And this Marion Hill is this wonderful example of how Pinetown got this right. So the climate is fantastic. There are some natural resources, and they, in order to address the basic workforce skills, on the right-hand side of where the toll gate is, you'll see tons of low-cost housing. And the low-cost housing was there to accommodate people who will have those entry-level skills. So they made sure that they ticked each of these boxes. And then the advanced skills. There are three universities within the vicinity of Pinetown. Um, there are several bits of investment into patents that are registered. There is significant capital. The infrastructure, they built a substation to serve the factories who establish in that area. And then obviously, guys, they had water reticulation done, and there are significant technologies in the firms that operate there. Then home demand. And I think it is, if we manufacture, how much can we sell locally? And it's how much of our goods and services can we offset globally? The related and supporting industries, and again, this is where the Marion Hill were, group of factories work so well. And generally, have they got the right service industries? And essentially, what will happen in that Marion Hill area is that you would have a supplier in the same street as the person that would use the components that the supplier manufactures. So it becomes this internal. Oh, Sinead, the one thing, and I'm so glad you raised that, and we'll spend this on South Africa at the moment. So it becomes this self-supporting ecosystem. It's a wonderful example. And then the last one, um, um, structure and rivalry. I think the reality is that, the organizations there use best practices. They understand the importance of best practices. When I did my PhD, I had my findings verified by one of the car component manufacturers in that area. So you can see a summary there. But if we look at that summary and we use South Africa as a potential investment destination, right, let's look at the basics. Infrastructure. Our road system is collapsing. Our rail system is as dodgy as hell. I mean, trucks overpower road users. There are some unskilled humans. We have the brain drain in South Africa. Please give me a second, guys. My apologies for that. I just had to get water, a bit of a tickly throat. Um, yeah, we see brain drain in South Africa being a real issue. Advanced factors, I think, yeah, the kind of things that will get managers to send their seniors here. And you can see there, sophisticated infrastructure, road, rail, etc. Education and training systems. I'm sorry to say, guys, our education, unless you are in private education, is not up to standard. Um, Research and development. I've seen how research and development component of universities have started closing down. And I think the reality is all these things will then add in terms of making us an attractive investment destination. And then home demand. I think we've got a reasonable demand, but with unemployment levels, and remember, we've got real and stated unemployment levels. The real unemployment levels run about to 60%, but Stats SA will tell us is about around 40%. Guys, and then just also local suppliers that can provide you with your components. And then just, guys, the level of domestic competition. So, in terms of what makes an organization able to reinvent itself all the time, that allows an organization to remain relevant, I think the first one is understanding what is happening in the world, understanding what competitors are doing, being able to discern from the signals from the environment what the industry needs, and then has to be light on your feet. So learning, etc. You need multiple cultures represented, and the ability to do business with multiple cultures is essential. One of my favorite stories, and I always digress when I teach, I did my master's in 2000 in at the University of Port Elizabeth. And at that point, and remember, Port Elizabeth is where we build cars. There were young African students studying French, German, in particular, those two languages. And the idea was, what the hell would you be studying this nonsense for? But in reality, is if you build Volkswagen in a particular place, you will deal directly with German speaking people from overseas. Same with Persia. And it was interesting how those students were appointed on the basis of their language abilities, because those are the key things in terms of interacting with the home nation. Yeah, getting your global market sorted in terms of your supply chain, getting from the best destinations, the best quality at the best price, and then just constantly innovating to improve and increase and update. Has to learn all the time, guys, and just being able to adjust your production lines very rapidly. I mean, I watched in Pietermaritzburg somebody take a production line that manufactured alcohol, drinking alcohol, and turned it into a production line overnight to manufacture sanitizer. And then just understanding the risk, and you will get knocked down, and the ability to stand up again. So, when we look at a country, in addition to the things we've spoken about, you will be expected to do some sort of pestle analysis. Now, remember, this is at a country level, and yeah, I think we'll look at your second assignment to see how well you guys figured out what makes Namibia tick. Please do me a favor in terms of that Namibia one. Please go to websites in Namibia about Namibia before you do your SWOT analysis or your pestle analysis. Also spend a bit of time looking at some of the American CIA sites. Right. I'm definitely not going through these because we did this for the assignment. Not going through this, guys. You know this by now. The one thing that I want to chat about is what happens in industries. I think when we move international, I think the reality is you're able to maximize what you can get from overseas, from other countries, your resources, the right skills. And I think we have to keep up in terms of our communication and manufacturing technologies, and then sharing knowledge across different organizations, countries, etc. And then the idea of becoming cost efficient, and then accommodating whatever the industry has to deal with in terms of regulation, and then dealing with societal norms. Sorry, guys, I really am feeling completely unwell, and my apologies for rushing a little bit. So, in terms of, I did spend 2 hours today at It is. I saw that, Sinead, and that's why people at some point were saying that they wanted Mandarin as a compulsory subject at school. Now, I don't think it should be a compulsory subject, but certainly at university, Mandarin should be an alternative for people who want to enter that industry. So, in terms of the cage, guys, I think it allows us the potential using some sort of statistical and a little bit of gut feel on whether we should move to a particular environment. And it's based on essentially how close the values, the culture, etc., and the operational realities of different regions are, of different countries are. So the cage distance model is important because from a cultural distance perspective, it tells us how close from a cultural value, religious perspective, language perspective, what we have is mirrored in another country. And if it's a very small difference, that makes that country a potential investment destination. The second one is how different are their government institutions and their approach to government to ours. So again, if you are a free market and you want to start dealing with a socialism type in market, it becomes a different approach. And then distance in terms of physical distance, time zones being affected, and then economic distance. I mean, again, are we a free market or are we a communist or whichever option there is? Right. So when we go global, guys, you'll see we've mentioned these previously. You will have pressures for cost reduction. And I mean, if you're selling Lamborghinis and if you're selling Bugattis, there are no pressures for lost cost reduction. So you generally would be at a low end there. If you're selling T-shirts, there are high levels of concern about cost reduction. In terms of local responsiveness, yeah, I mean, if you're selling T-shirts very low, in terms of local responsiveness in South Africa, you need to make sure that you are selling right-hand drive vehicles. So, in terms of the different options, and as I said, cost reduction or local responsiveness, the first one is international strategy. So, if we go back here quickly and see where it is, your international strategy is low in terms of cost and low in terms of local responsiveness. And the reality is that you end up with selling Bugattis because the reality is more that you don't have to worry about much personalization and trying to keep things cheap. International strategy. Right. A multi-domestic and localization strategy. This is the difficult one, guys. So if we look at the multi-domestic strategy and localization strategy, it is the need for high pressure in terms of local responsiveness and then low pressure in terms of cost reduction. So, anyone want to give me a suggestion of what could fit in there? Me a suggestion of the kind of industry or company would fit in there. Significant pressure on localization, not much pressure on reducing costs. Any suggestions, guys? For me, it is still cars, but these would be cars like the Chinese brands. So, the high end Audis and BMWs, etc., would fit into there. The high end side of the Chinese brands would fit into that. Sorry, not the high end. This is Chinese vehicles. My apologies. So the Chinese vehicles, where everything is about cost saving and the need to personalize in South Africa is there and is quite significant. So when we have high in terms of your your pressures as well as pressures for local responsiveness, anyone want to suggest where that is? Global strategy, what kind of industry are we looking at? Me as t-shirts, guys. Everything about a t-shirt means it has to be good value for money. Come, Dad. Okay. Sorry, guys. My brain is so fried from working today. I'm feeling awful. I spent 2 hours at the doctor and I've been told I need urgent surgery. So my brain is not here. And I apologize for that, guys. And you can have a glance at the global strategy. So, in terms of adaptation, aggregation, and arbitrage, the idea of adaptation is essentially where we change our business model or a couple of parts of our business model to fit locally. Aggregation is where we try and get to economies of scale by bringing together different production facilities. Arbitrage is looking at which economy will give us the best option in terms of survival. And then the transnational strategy, guys. So you can see the high cost reduction, high pressures for local responsiveness. It's a tough one. I can't think offhand what would fit in there. Guys, I'm so sorry. I am not feeling well. And yeah, I should have maybe postponed class. My apologies.